Howdy, my name is Callum, also known as Northern Dice, and today I'm going to be giving you my full thoughts on a short and sweet review, I'm hoping it's going to be short and sweet, of Rolling Realms by Stonemaier Games. This is a 1 to 6 player roll and write game based on the Stonemaier franchise games. You get realms, you allocate dice numbers to them to score stars over 3 rounds, players tot up their points and whoever scores the most wins. This copy of Rolling Realms was sent to us by Stonemaier Games for the purposes of unbiased review. We aren't paid for any of our media produced and all of our thoughts are our own. Rolling Realms by Stonemaier Games is a roll and write with an evolving system. The idea is that you are rolling through the realms of the Stonemaier Games and gaining points based on 2 die rolls that everybody shares. The realms that they work within, the cards, are not necessarily going to be the same. With this, as well as Stonemaier produces more games, more of these cards are going to be produced, meaning that this is a game that may never stop evolving and be dynamic beyond dynamic. Inside the box, we have got a rule set, as you would expect in any game. The rules are incredibly small, and you also have a solitaire mini-golf minigame, where you can compete against an almost predetermined AI score system, in the same sense of golf as you have a par and a score to aim to achieve. The actual rules themselves are pretty bare, but that is because the game is also pretty bare in terms of weight. It is a roll and write after all, and roll and writes historically are quite simple and easy to access. That does not mean that it is in any way tactically lacking. This game has got a lot of depth to it, and there are a lot of decisions that will matter in the game. Inside, you've got a brief overview of all of the actual cards that you get inside, the realm by realm explanation, and then you have the resources, which is another end game element within the game. You also have a cool little funky map, which is just a piece of card where you can store your scores for the golf. However, the issue with this is that it is paper, and when it is written on, it is done. You also have lots and lots of little wipes ready to wipe off your whiteboard markers, because all of this can be written on, which I think is a fantastic little element. You have 2 big chunky dice ranging from 1 to 6. These are not custom dice, but they have got really nice weight to them. I like them. I like them quite a lot. The pens themselves are very generic. Just a whiteboard pen, effectively. But with that, it does mean that there is scope for, if it does run out or die, you can just go out and purchase another one. It is not a bespoke item. Every player will always get a resource card, and they will also get a scorecard. Now, these 2 cards are very, very different, but essential in what they do. This one tracks your resources, which you can gain throughout the game, and can spend X amount of resources to gain X amount of benefits. An example on this one, with pumpkins, you can adjust a die plus or minus 1 for every 2 pumpkins you spend. You can adjust a die plus 1, minus 1, or 0, and you may use it in a realm you've already used at this turn, which is a big thing because each die can only be used in 1 realm. All players gain 3 realms, you roll 2 dice, so you're able to activate 2 realms. The love hearts allow you to, well, if you roll a pair, you can activate the hearts for 2 to gain another die of that value, so you'd have 3. And you can gain a die of the same value as either of the dice rolled. And finally, the coins, if the sum of the roll is 7, you gain a die of the same value of either rolled, and you can also gain a die of X based on the coins you spend. This is the only way you will get a 3rd die for your 3rd realm. This one, however, just tracks the rolls that you produce. So if you roll a 3 and a 5, you would write 3 and 5, and everyone would do the exact same. If you roll a 1 and a 6, it would be 1, 6, 6, 6. 2, 4, and it go all the way down based on the number of rounds you're playing. And I say the number of rounds you're playing because in a 2-player, 3-player, up to 6-player game, you would use this to the end. With the golf, you would only use up to a certain amount. And you can play it in rounds, round 1, round 2, round 3, where you would have 3 cards, rotate them, 3 cards, rotate them, 3 cards, rotate them. Now that does make it sound like the game will last a very long time, but in all honesty, it does not. The game says 30 minutes, and I think 30 minutes is an on-point guess for how long the game takes. The cards themselves are all very unique and different. So you've got the backs, which will almost help you diversify what you've got, but then you've got the actual systems themselves. You do also get the explanation cards for the golf. But these are all unique enough to keep them interesting, but also challenging enough to make it so that it is worth learning what each of them do. So I'll just grab as many of these as I can because I've mixed these up massively. So that's what we've got for the minute. And I will not go into too much detail on these. All you need to know is that each of these works very differently. And the idea is that as you roll, you will activate a realm. So let's say that we are playing with Pendulum, Siphon, Charterstone. I roll 2 dice. I get a 6 and a 2. I'd write that on my sheet here, like this. And then I would activate certain realms. Now, because I've got a 6 and a 2, I can activate any 6 or any 2 on any of these, but I can only do it as many times as you've got access to. So an example here, I could activate this. I would put a 6 there. If I activate this one instead, I would gain a pumpkin. If I activate this one instead, I would activate that. And the scoring for each of these is different, but it's important to know how they score. You do get an explanation at the top, which is quite handy, to be fair. It is very well explained, but sometimes you will want to look back in the rulebook just for a bit of a brief. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on these. All you need to know is that by the end of the round, you will have produced some stars, and you may want to tick or colour them in or whatever it is that you do, and that is your score for that round, plus 0.1 for each resource that you have not spent. And with resources, anytime you gain them, you would circle them, and anytime you spend them, you would cross them off. Of course, you gain the benefit to it, but you do not get the 0.1 extra for each one crossed off. You only gain them for ones that are circled. After 3 rounds, all players would tot up their total points, and whomever has scored the most wins. The game, as I've said, ever evolves because Stonemaier are constantly producing new fantastic games, but with that then you can buy extra expansion packs for the games that you purchase to add into Rolling Realms. And of course, each booster pack would include enough cards for all players. Whether it includes any extra holes for the golf mode, I'm not entirely certain, but in reality, it doesn't need to. I found the golf mode kept me occupied for more than a good couple of days of hardcore solo gaming. And in all honesty, I don't think it's one that I've mastered. It's chaotic in the sense of a dice roll can be, but at the same time, it does mean that you are always going to be able to strive for perfection based on how you use those dice rolls, as opposed to hoping for that perfect game based on the die roll. I'm going to keep this as short and sweet as I can. And I'll be honest from the outset, I'm not the biggest fan of roll and writes. They're enjoyable, but I don't find them as tactically, fulfilling as other games do. Simply because I find that when I play roll and writes, flip and writes, I end up going for more the mindful, enjoyable experience than I get to the end and remember that I've been playing a board game and I've been flattened. This, however, I don't find gives me that impression. This is pure tactics all the time, but it never feels like you're interacting with other players. It's almost like you're running a solitaire experience in a group of other people sharing that solitaire experience, which sounds a bit surreal, but you've got to remember that you're all sharing the dice rolls and the dice rolls alone. Beyond that, it is just a competition between who can manage those numbers the best across the cards that you're given. It's an enjoyable thing. It's not something I'm personally a big fan of, but at the same time, as a solo game, pure solitaire, I love this. I think this is absolutely superb. This is one of those games where I can sit down, if I've got the house to myself for an hour, I can play a good couple of rounds of this with a cup of tea in the garden and just really enjoy myself, let time carry away. And I don't think it's a game that I will be getting rid of. It is a review copy, as I've already said, which means that I did get this for free, but my goodness am I already looking at those expansion little card booster packs. It does give me the old Pokemon vibe where I'm expecting to get shinies and knowing full well that I'm going to get, Red Rising in a pack 6 times, but I digress. I enjoy this and I think it works really, really well as a solitaire solo experience. As a group, you are just sharing that same experience, but for some that'll work really well. The cards themselves, they are really diverse in what they do, but you are going to gain favourites in terms of which ones you'd prefer to have on your, as a realm available to you. For me, I love Between Two Castles. I think that works excellently. I like Scythe because I like the tactical swapping to and throwing. And I like Pendulum because I like the fact that you've got to manage the resources you're ticking off across the top before you activate the hourglasses. And I think they're incredibly thematic to the games they're meant to represent. Pendulum with the hourglasses ticking down. One of them's a short time, so you've only got 6. One of them's a medium time. One of them's a long time, so you've got more dice. Between Two Castles, you are physically trying to fill the castles up with those numbers and you want to get certain columns in order to gain the stars. I think that's awesome as well. What was the other one? Even Charterstone's not too bad. It's not my favourite Stonemaier game, but the actual Rolling Realms implementation of it is pretty cool. Some of them, however, I'm not as much of a fan of, and I'm not afraid to say that. Between Two Cities just feels like a dodgy tic-tac-toe. Euphoria just feels a little bit hollow. And I guess because I've not played Between Two Cities and Euphoria, I don't see the thematic links as well as other people may do. Wingspan is brutal compared to the core game. Brutal as in really brutal. If you don't gain what you need to gain inside of that, you don't score anything. And I guess for Wingspan's core game scoring element, it does reflect very well, but it doesn't have the same charm. If you are going into this game and you're thinking, I love Wingspan, so I will love the Wingspan card, then I'm afraid you're going to be a bit on the bottom a little bit, because these cards, as well as they reflect their scoring elements in the theme of the core game, some of them a little bit looser, some of them a little bit more brutal. You will gain favourites, but if you're playing for 3 rounds, you're going to encounter 9 of these anyway. You may start with Euphoria, Viticulture, Between Two Castles and nail it, but then the dice rolls for you when you get Pendulum Scythe and Wingspan just flop and you aren't able to do as well. It's round to round going to be, I don't know, you're almost going to be playing best of 3 if you're playing with 2 people, and you're going to be really, really struggling if you're playing with more, because someone's always going to pinch it to the post in terms of how well they're able to manipulate the cards they've got. There's a lot of variables to consider when you're thinking about that tactical element, and if you're overthinking what other cards people have got and how well they're going to do, you're going to flop on your own. The game should only last 30 minutes, which makes it about 10 minutes a round, and in all honesty, I think it is that. You have got that risk of analysis paralysis, which you have with most games with dice, where you've got to allocate them and then you can't allocate them into that spot again. But I think it handles it quite well in the fact that the decisions aren't massive. They add up to a big outcome, but in the short run, it is just, this is the best place to put it, place it there. If you are going to play a game of, I need a 6, so I'm going to hold on to this and place it elsewhere, you might not do as well as you want, but it is a learning element. This is a game where if you know how the actual different realm system works, then you will do very well against other players. If you are very fresh into this, you'll be wanting to refer to that rule book an awful lot. I didn't do very well in my first game because I didn't understand how a couple of these cards worked. There are some excellent videos online of how to play, on how best to understand these cards, and I cannot recommend them enough, just simply because this game is tremendously dynamic, and every play is always going to be different based on not only the chaos of a chaos of a dice roll, but also the allocation of the cards as they come out. You are going to get 3 every time out of 11, and then you're going to get another 3 out of the remaining 8, then 3 out of 5, 2 aren't going to be in play. There's a lot of variables to consider. If you are wanting to find out how the realms work to a really good degree, check out how to play out there. Check out how to play a video that's out there and read it, but more importantly, read what's on top of the card and read what's on the bottom of the card. Player interaction, as I've already said, doesn't really exist in this game. You're just playing solo solitaire in a group of people. It is nice to see how other people are managing, and it's nice to have that open discussion of, I'm going to allocate this 6 to my viticulture, which will activate this so I know how many stars I've got. And I think that's quite sweet, because then if you're able to say to people, oh, I've got this many stars, you know where you sit, and it almost makes it friendly competition. But at the same time, this is a game that you could happily have a group of 6 rowdy people, all hardcore silence, in the room playing this game, because it doesn't require any communication. If you're taking turns to roll, you just say it's your roll, and that's as far as it gets. I guess my qualm with that is that I like communicating with people, even in a roll and write. An example of cartographers, where you've got that instant reaction to other people, where you're having to say, oh, I've withdrawn a purple, so we have to rotate, so there's that interaction. There's also a little bit of take that in there, which I'm not always a fan of in a roll and write, but it means you've got to communicate. Even in something like Isla Clat's Explore and Draw, you still have to communicate the whole, I'm going to take this row, I'm using my power, just letting people know what you're doing. Rolling Realms doesn't feel like that's necessary, and it does feel like a game you could play in silence. For some, that'd be beautiful, that's what they want. For others, like myself, I like that open communication. I like the fact that I need to talk to people. Despite my cold, hard exterior, I do enjoy the socialisation, even in a roll and write. As for artwork, there's not much on it. I mean, you've got the gimmicky little holes for the Solitaire mini-golf game, and they're cute. They do reflect a mini-golf map, but it's not really artwork. It's just there for theme. I like it, it's cute. The actual artwork on the front of the box is the big seller. I've got the box upside down, just realised that. Beautiful. It looks gorgeous, it's stunning. The artwork on the cards, not really there for art. It's more just systems to explain what you've got to do, and I get that that's necessary. Artwork's non-existent in this game, but it doesn't need it. Component quality, however, oh my days! They've absolutely nailed it. I love the fact that these are dry wipe cards, and the fact that they are so incredibly sturdy. What is going on? They feel incredible. All the backs are different for the different sets of people, which means that you can easily just distribute these out and then be able to organise the game as you go. And the explanations are really good, as I keep saying. They are sometimes a little bit hard to grasp just based on you might not know the mechanic of the main game to understand how it links into this, yada yada yada. Check a how to play video, read the rules, make sure you understand, or ask the person whose game it is who's played this. The dice, nice big and chunky. I like the fact that they are nice blue and green little hexes on the actual pips, but again, I don't really class them as custom die because I could use any 2d6 for this. It wouldn't feel the same, but I could do it. Overall, I'm really impressed by the component quality of this, and the fact that they're adding more packs that you can add on to this game means that replayability is just given tenfold. And I guess that's my comment for the replayability in this. Because of all that chaos, you'll never get two games the same, so automatically it ticks that massive box. But with that as well, the Solitaire mini-golf game, I guess in some capacities, you could play it with more than one person and just compete against that. I don't really think you'd ever want to, but you could. I wouldn't. I like that on my own. This is a Solitaire experience for a group, that's a Solitaire experience for a solo. But yeah, replayability is definitely there, and they're tenfold by the fact that they keep on releasing more, which keeps this game fresh, and also means that people, if they are massive Stonemaier fans, may say, oh, I love Red Rising, have you got the Red Rising card? Here it is. It'll be that shock when the actual scoring is nothing like Red Rising, which I'm sure it is, So final thoughts. I'm a massive fan of Rolling Realms. I really, really like it. Even as a roll and write, I think it's a wonderful solo experience. But that's where the crux is. For me, it's solo. This game is a pure solo experience. If you're playing with 6 people, I hate to say it, you're still playing solo. That player interaction just isn't there. It's a fun solo experience, and it's a fantastic Solitaire experience with the mini-golf minigame. And the actual component quality, the lack of artwork, I know, the component quality, the actual mechanics within the explanations all make it for a superbly fun game that is really accessible and yet incredibly tactically fun. But it is not a multiplayer game. It is pure solo in my head. But that's fine. And I don't mind competing against someone else's golf score. It's almost like when you go bowling. You're not really playing with other people. You're playing your own game while other people play their game. But nobody ever complains about that because it's still that social element. So if you are going to play this and you are wanting for a social element, you're going to have to drive home that communication and make sure you're talking. Because otherwise, it's not going to be there and you're going to be lacking. Anyway, I've rambled for more than long enough. This is a short and sweet, so let's keep it short and sweet. Thank you ever so much for sticking around for this long. This has been my full thoughts of Rolling Realms by Stonemaier Games. I'll catch you next time.